welcome to Spirit Switchboard. I'm your host, Kerrilynn Shellhorn, and you are listening to us live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 FM, New Orleans. Thanks for being here, guys. Let's just change some of this stuff up. So our guest is running just a few minutes late. So you guys are we're gonna hang out for a little bit. If you are watching us on Facebook, hi, Contessa, thanks for being here. Oh, you're welcome. It was really a pleasure. You have been such a great support on all platforms, like on the porch group, on the Facebook page, and being here. I felt like we had already connected before. So yeah, it was good to finally connect in person like that. Hi, Allie. Hi, Julie. Yes, Tanya. Happy Friday. Hi, Kathy. So if you are on Facebook and you want your name and stuff to come up in the chat so that we can see, you can head over to StreamYard and just give Facebook permission. You can pop over onto YouTube as well too. UFO Paranormal Radio Network and Spirit Switchboard has its own channel as well too. And if you're watching us on Roku, you can look under UFO Paranormal Radio. We are there as well. Hi, Kathy. Thanks for being here. Hi, Tori. The Wiz is in the house. Hi, Jocelyn. Hi, Sue. Thanks for being here, everyone. Tonight, oh, hi, Tristan. How are you doing? How was everybody's week? You know, I was really weepy at the beginning of the week. And I thought maybe like I wasn't grounded enough. I feel I'm pretty good with all of those things. And I was realizing, because it's my first year not having a kiddo graduating or like in school. And I'm realizing this was like the last week of school. So those emotions are really high. Was anybody else kind of emotional? Deb, how are you this week? Hi, Deb. So if you guys are new to the show, my friend Deborah Hackett-Jones, she is a medical intuitive and sensitive. She is brilliant at her job and the things that she offers for people and her clients. She has been on the show a couple of times. If you go into the archives, you'll be able to watch those segments. Yeah, really off. I was really off too. I didn't necessarily, and I was like legit weepy where I had tears that I had to wipe, but I didn't feel personally, I didn't feel sad. It was just super weird. Oh, Tammy, you too. I felt sad, but no idea why. In Toronto, celebrating Pride weekend. Be safe. Have fun. I hope it's a great weekend. The weather's supposed to be raining tomorrow, so I hope that shifts and changes. Yeah, for sure. But do you know what, Deb? I kind of feel like we say that all the time. I kind of feel like we say that every week. That there's lots of shifts going on, and I realize that, and is it planetary? Is it that so many people are coming into their self-awareness? People are purging their stuff. Is it not being transmuted back into love, and it's just being dumped into the collective consciousness? I don't know. Lots. Is it lots? Kathy, you too, in a very emotional week. And we're moving into a long weekend as well too. And I find like the energy gets pretty wonky leading up to leading up to long weekends as well. Everyone feels like panic mode, right? And panic shop. So I avoid at all costs. Hi, Joanne. I'm glad that you made it. I'm glad that you made it. Hi, Angie. Yeah, and it's emotional, right? Tristan's just saying, yes, I've been feeling very heavy this past week too. Well, agreed. A lot of Deb is just sharing there is a lot of chaos going on. Hi, Nicole. It's easy when we're removed from things as well too, like not having a kiddo in school age, right? But that change and the change of season, which didn't really dawn on me either, the adjustment to the change of season as well too, and how that would affect emotionally. Because I don't normally. I think for me personally, I tend to get into a funk midsummer right around my birthday, which sounds horrible, but I find the weather changes that first week of August, and I used to get so sad about sending the kids back to school. I liked them being at home in the summer, so having them go back, I just was not happy about counting down the last days, weeks of summer. Exactly. Deb is sharing, staying centered and grounded, acknowledge your feelings and try to let them go. I agree. And then when I was working, I know that it still horrifies everybody, but I just put that big crystal bowl underneath my desk with water and salts to ground while I was working, because that was helpful too. But I was using the tuning forks. I was standing outside on the grass quite a bit this week as well too, just trying to ground it all. And it was funny because I had a few people reach out to me asking if they were doing something wrong because the emotions were so big. And I don't feel that just because we're feeling it means that we're doing something wrong. It's just acknowledging it, right? Hi, Delilah. Delilah is just sharing. I just wanted to say hello. I hope that you have a great evening. Thank you very much. I hope you do too. And I just wanted to send you some great energy. Thank you. We're just going to take all of that grounded energy that everybody is sending out. Hi, Michelle. Hi, Loretta. Oh, Nicole is sharing. I'm a teacher here in North Carolina, and I was super sad and emotional the first few weeks of June when school got out here. Yeah, I think that's what I was feeling. And admittedly, I don't always handle those sad feelings really well, because sometimes I'll just do a little bit of emotional eating. And I know that it's awful and I have to work on it, but sometimes I still have a slippery slope there. I have graduated to not storing chocolate in my desk though. So there is some positive to that. Deb is just sharing. It's also vibrational frequencies that are changing. Always come from heart space. Thanks, Deb. So I would like to, we're just going to switch this up for a second. Take a second. I'm just going to tell you about the guest that I have on. I was like super excited because I feel like I'm going to have to harness all of that grounded energy that everybody is sending, that I don't go sideways with this, because I feel like I could talk to this guest that's coming on for like hours and hours. We might have to have her back. I was really nervous about it all day, thinking about it actually, because my squirrel brain was going sideways and I kept writing and writing and writing. Way more than we can do in 2 hours. But I'm super excited to share that Martha Hazzard Decker is the guest today. And for many, many reasons, I was excited about this. So I'm going to read you guys her bio so that I do her justice, because her journey is fascinating, and what she does is brilliant. And I'm so grateful that she chose to say yes to come on Spirit Switchboard. So Martha Decker has been involved in investigating the paranormal actively since 1999. She's the founder of East Texas Paranormal. Her experience includes investigating private homes, commercial businesses, historical sites, and public locations. Decker has a professional experience as an investigator, writer, and photographer, retiring in 2007 from law enforcement as the Assistant Chief of Police and Detective. She worked for the state of Texas as a child death investigator for 7 years after leaving law enforcement until she retired from that position in 2014. Currently, she's a process server with a private investigator specializing in cases involving children and missing persons. As a child, Decker experienced a number of unexplained occurrences which triggered her longtime interest into the unknown. She often presents during speaking engagements how to use common law enforcement techniques and apply them to paranormal interviews and investigations, including how to interview children. Decker is producing a show that has women over 50 doing what younger people do. I don't know, we're going to have to talk about age. We'll have to talk about age. Investigating various phenomena, wandering through the woods after Bigfoot, and more. They're the GIs. Oh my gosh, I just love this so much, Martha. AKA Granny Investigations. This may involve paranormal, UFOs, history, myths, oddities, Bigfoot, and mystery. Her book, Paranormal Profiling, was published in 2014 and is a basic on how to interview potential clients and witnesses. In 1995, Decker received a first place award from the Associated Press for specialty reporting while working as a journalist for the Cedar Creek Pilot. Decker has articles on numerous internet websites, e-zines, and writes for theexaminer.com. She has over 20 years of investigation experience ranging from criminal to civil, with some journalistic thrown in as well. In the mid-'80s, she produced and directed several television shows, including Ray Wiley Hubbard Live at Dallas Palace. Decker has spent over 10 years as a volunteer firefighter and rescue scuba diver. Like, that resume is something impressive.
Well, and obviously I sent you an old one.
Yes, but that's okay. Because you can update it now.
Yeah, because the G's are kind of on hold right now. But, a bunch of us got together and we were thinking, you on TV, you can be, if you're male, you can be fat, you can have beards down to your knees, you can be toothless, you can be all this stuff and have TV show. So
it's true. It's true. I was pretty grateful though, because I had a local cable show. And they didn't, because it was community programming, I didn't have to worry about my weight. I didn't have to worry about any of that stuff. But outside of the community programming, there was my weight, so the color of my hair, my age.
Yeah. Well, that was it when cable first came to the Dallas area, and I lived in a suburb of Dallas. That's when I did the Ray Wiley Hubbard show, and back then they called it the Q van, but it's the remote van.
Right.
So I'm in my early 30s, and I've got over $1 million worth of stuff I'm responsible for. And when we did that, I had 3 cameras, I had a crew of 12, and then I had that van out there, and I was the first person in the Dallas area to produce a show. Using all that stuff, and it turned out really, really good.
That's amazing.
And it showed down in Austin back then too. Then I did some other shows. I did a talk show type thing, and several others, because I would do the producing, the editing, the directing, sometimes the the camera. I did a little bit of everything with that. And, but that was because of my early beginnings at 18 shooting rock concerts in Tennessee and Memphis.
That's wild.
But that's a whole nother story. And I've got another book besides that one. I've got my, Haunted Hill House where spirits speak.
Yes. And I'd love to talk about that more too after.
Right. And then in addition to that, I am also a field investigator for MUFON. And it wasn't quite 10 years with the fire department. That was one fire department. I was just on a fire department with the city that I had retired from in law enforcement. I was there for about a year and a half or so. And they're just far enough away that it's like, I've done all this. I don't need to do it again.
Well, it's impressive. Everything that you've done. There's so much experience that and knowledge and wisdom that you can share if people are willing to listen.
Yeah, we just call me, the female George Plimpton. If anybody knows who he is anymore.
That's okay. We don't need him. We just need you.
Right.
We just go with that. The very first online radio show that I had was 17 years ago, and it was based out of Tyler, Texas. And I would call down, and it was for helping parenting or supporting parenting children with intuitive gifts. Because I have been intuitive my whole life. I have 4 kids. They were all intuitive from the time they were little on. So that's what the radio show was about. But it was based out of, the network was out of Tyler, Texas, which is, I thought, fun.
Gotcha. Well, one of the talk shows, this was in the early 80s. And I titled it, "Why Are We Killing Our Children?" Because I did it on car seats. That was before you had to have car seats. Yeah. And I interviewed doctors. I went out to Toys R Us and we did a thing with car seats and just a little bit of everything.
You really have. What kind of experiences did you have as a child? Paranormal experiences.
Yeah. Probably the first one, I was somewhere around 4, a little bit after 4, between 4 and 5. And I don't know if that one, I always looked at it as paranormal, but talking to some of my knowledgeable UFO friends, it may have been more of an alien experience versus a paranormal experience. But that's when it started. And then it's just periodically things have, happened around me, my whole life. It's not a constant. It wasn't a constant. Well, the empath was a constant. I just didn't know what it was for a long time.
Right. And if you didn't have people around you using those words or talking about those things, I find for a lot of people, especially women, it sort of ignites back up in that mid-30s, close to 40.
Well, I had it all the time as far as being the empath. I didn't realize. And as a teenager, there were no mentors for me up in Memphis, Tennessee. I didn't know anybody except for the girl I ran around with in my last couple of years of high school. Yeah. Because she was sensitive too. And we would, of course, back in teenagers, we did the Ouija board. We followed all the instructions, thankfully. But, but we didn't know it.
Board. Do you agree with the spirit board now as an adult with the knowledge that you have had?
Well, to me, using that is no different than using an obelisk, a recorder, or all of those different tools that you see them, use and that everybody uses. They're all the same. They should all be opened and closed.
I agree. 100% I agree.
They're all the same. Just go by different names, Sometimes it's a radio. Sometimes it's it might be an SB7. It might be a recorder. It might be a Ouija board. It might be a spirit board. They all work the same way.
Yeah, I agree.
At least that's how I feel. Yeah.
Yeah. I see it the same way too. And we're not going to stop people from trying any of those things. So we need to take the time to educate people as much as possible, like
Right.
open and close. And here's the potential things that can go sideways. And if you're not
Right.
able to do it, then you have somebody with you that does.
And don't just open up. Is anybody there? Is anything there? You know, leave it wide open, you know. Speak your intention to keep it to where not any old Joe comes through and then you can't get rid of Joe.
Yeah, if you don't know how, for sure.
Right.
Thank you, Catherine, for sharing us out, and thanks for being here. I was thinking too, you know, when I was preparing for this, even starting as a photographer, like that was where you started. All of those skills and your eye and your perspective, and then moving into policing and being a detective, all of that stuff, even firefighting, like you're honing all of those observational skills so much that it would feel like a natural, you know, slip into looking at the paranormal and seeing things from a left brain as well as the right brain.
You know, and at one point I go, what can I do where I can apply all these skills that I have? And that's where law enforcement came in. You know, as far as the people skills in their interviews, you know, I was in journalism for quite a while, but that can be applied to other interviews. So everything I know was just going, but I had more than I could use in journalism.
Right.
So, you know, I was working for the newspaper and I was reserving, which, you know, in Texas, a reserve is the same as a paid officer. It's just you're not paid. It's volunteer work. And that's the only difference. And pretty soon after that, I went on full time with the police department.
And how long did you work in the police department? Because you retired assistant chief.
Right.
Yeah.
I was with that department for 15 years.
Wow.
Went from reserve almost to sergeant within a year, I'd say, or so. Fairly quickly, I went to sergeant. And then I stayed that way until, I don't know, until I was assistant chief.
So when did the paranormal investigation start?
Well, I say since 99, but really I've been doing them off and on for over 30 years. So when I retired from police department, you know, in the area, because I live in the area where I work, and some people knew about it when I worked in law enforcement, but it wasn't until I retired from that I started a team and went from there where, you know, it was more open, because being in East Texas and you're working felony cases, you don't necessarily want the defense attorney. You don't want to turn into like they were doing with Stormy Daniels with Trump's, where they were making fun of her, but I see dead people. I can talk to dead people, you know? So we kind of kept it quiet. Yes.
But so that was the question I was going to ask next. Like in this 30-year span, how have you seen it shifted? Has social media helped or hindered? Do you find it's more like the involvement of it where there's more acceptance?
There's more accepted, there's more out in the open. There's a lot more officers or people from law enforcement that I know personally, and I know there's a lot of others who are in and a little more open about it now than there was.
Yeah.
There's just so many shows out there. Paranormal's been around for, you know, over 1,000 years. And when you think of it as a big business, it's been, you know, even as a business, it's been probably a few hundred years or so, or 1,000 years, you know, when you think about it. It's not going anywhere. It just continues to evolve.
Well, and I think it's no different than anything else. There are people who do this with their own agenda and intention that may not be above board, and those that have a different agenda and intention in being of service. And what their intention isn't always being of service for other people.
That's true. I've talked to a lot of younger people. They don't read books. They don't go to conferences. They don't listen to podcasts. And that's one of my recommendations. If somebody comes and asks me, what should I do to learn more? It's read, go to a conference, listen to, all the stuff that's out there, and I tell them, don't go watch paranormal show on TV to learn what to do, because most of those are entertainment.
Yeah. And edited, like, you don't get that much. Even for the cable show that I had, they would film a session that would be an hour and a half long, and it's whittled down to a 12-minute segment. Like, right. You're only seeing what they're editing out, what they want you to see. So, it's not
exactly
a depiction of what an investigation may be.
So I found that a lot of people who are younger, they see the shows, they go on the show, they base their training on the shows. So when they go somewhere, that because they see it just happen, boom, boom, boom on the show, they don't realize how many hours and days that it was whittled down to those 40, 45 minutes because of ads. And
all the coffee runs that happen in between. Yeah,
I know. And they get, so they expect something to happen immediately, and then they get bored, and they say, "Oh, there's nothing here," but you have to use patience. And
so, does that come down to, like, is there a defining difference between being a paranormal investigator, a paranormal enthusiast, or a ghost hunter?
Yeah, and I don't like that term. I don't like that term, ghost hunter. A lot of the people use that term, but because I've never hunted ghosts. And, it used to be people. I had my hunting and fishing holes when I was a cop. But
That's funny. On the woo-woo end of that, for me too, like, I would do these events, and there are places in Ontario that I refuse to go to again, because I know what comes up consistently when I'm working, and I don't want to have anything to do with it when I have to go into those areas. So I don't go anymore. So I avoid those fishing holes.
Like, there you go.
Yeah, I avoid
exactly.
Those. But do you feel like, I've had this conversation with other people, like, I agree with you with the ghost hunter term, and I always equate it, me personally, and I'd like to hear your thoughts, is that person that's just wanting to get that endorphin hit, dopamine rush, like they're going to an amusement park, like just that quick rush. They're really not there for understanding.
There's a lot of people like that. They form teams. They'll go to commercial locations, and that's all fine and good. But some of them will go to private homes. I still do private investigations for, with people with their homes or with their businesses. And you will probably never really ever see any of that on, anything public. I don't put it on my website. Is just kind of there, and I really haven't done a lot with it in a while, but it's there for information.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much how I do that. I have had to go into, I don't know how many homes, because somebody has come into their home, and if there's activity, they stirred it up and left. They never contacted the people like, this is what we found. Or if there's something that does come up, they go, oh, we don't do that, or they bring in these kind of psychics, that's just a friend of a friend of a friend who's really not gifted.
Well, even there are some psychics that have that ability, but they're outside of their wheelhouse. Then it's
Right.
okay. Like, just take accountability and go, it's outside of my wheelhouse, so I'll help you. It's when they
Well,
leave them with no help that drives me insane.
yeah. Well, the ones I'm talking about, they go to the houses and they are
They got nothing.
no more psychic than a pig is.
Oh,
And they come in and they tell them it's a demon, and they scare the family so bad and the children so bad, and then they leave.
yeah, that's not
And
good.
I've gone to, I can't tell you how many houses I've had to go, or even just talk to them on the phone. I wasn't thinking about stuff when I changed the name of the team to East Texas Paranormal. I wasn't thinking about Google and searches and how often I would come up using that name. And so somebody in East Texas looks for paranormal. I'm always right there on the front page.
Right.
And a lot of times I just talk to them on the phone and I'm able to figure out what it is or give them suggestions or explain different things, and they're good
Yeah.
a lot of the times.
And I think that's also a misconception about how much there is of, alleged hauntings or paranormal activity, or even, saying demons. It's just, you're going to see it on TV because it gets the ratings. It's not them saying that it's not happening, but not with the frequency that media would want you to believe.
Right. And I have gone to places that, there's one house I actually was going to, I think for 3 years, it was about once a year, we would go over to that house, and the people came from New York, upstate New York. They brought something with them, but it wasn't necessarily anything that bad. They bought a little house, sight unseen, more or less, off of internet, but it was through a mortgage company. And that mortgage company, they ought to be like, that company should be no more, but they weren't able really to speak with attorneys to get some kind of suit going because they didn't understand a lot of things. And all they did is they came in a car and they brought whatever fit in the car, and there's three or four kids, and then the parents. So they didn't bring a lot with them, and they got to that house. And when I got the call from them, and I started researching it, you go to the appraisal district, that house is not on that lot. So that is a house that doesn't fit with the neighborhood. It was moved in by somebody. And my first walk around it, when I was there to check on the outside and get a feel for the outside of the house, I could tell there had been a fire because there was a little bit of soot that maybe I might not have caught had I not fought fires before. Right. And you could not get the attic. You could not get into the attic from that house. The people that had it when they fixed it, they didn't put an entry. And I told them from the first time I went there for 3 years, I told them, you need to cut a hole and get up in the attic. For your safety, if nothing else, you need to see what's going on. We finally did determine that there was something that was pretty heavy in the house, and it kind of came down to sell it or move, and move, because there was something that was original part of the house in this one room where the fireplace was, that it wasn't going anywhere. But finally, after 3 years, Dad opened up cut a hole to go in, and the neighbors had said there was a fire in the house, but they didn't really speak with their neighborhoods. It was really in a low income area, and their family did not fit in at all. It wasn't safe to play outside, wasn't safe to walk to the store, and they didn't have car. Dad was an over the road truck driver, so he had the vehicle. And so they would have to be in the house and just, it was a pretty sad when I first came, no TV, but they all had their, their phones and their tablets. and would use
What
those.
changed? Did anything change when they made the hole up into the attic? Or did they
Nothing
discover
changed.
anything?
Yes, everything was burned up there. All
Oh,
the wood, the trusses and everything were all burnt up there. They did not repair it. They just slapped a roof and a ceiling on there and didn't tell anybody there had been a fire. And just based on the fire alone, they could have, they could have gotten some remediation and gotten free of that house. But,
wow.
and sometimes people want to get rid of something in their house, and there were several things in their house, and I would kind of clear it for about a year, and then sometimes people do things to actually bring it back
Well,
because
this
they
is
kind of
it.
miss the
Making
excitement
people
or
have
something.
accountability.
And so what happened was, the last time I was there, we did another cleansing and a blessing, and Mother is an absolute fanatical Supernatural, the show, fan. She literally, even though she's in her late 30s, she literally has all sorts of stuff from Supernatural, posters and pictures and cutouts and everything, in every single room of the house. Every room. And, some of that stuff, is, when we talked to her, you have some of these symbols, you have these different things. Their pictures are no big deal, but the other stuff you have in every room, we had told her the best thing she could do when we blessed the house was take all of that down. I said, you don't have to get rid of it. Fold it up, stick it in the attic. Put it up there in a box, but get it out of your living space and on every wall. Well, she didn't do that. I knew she wasn't going to do that, but I tried to explain to her. And the last time I talked to her, they ended up, they're back in upstate New York now. They went back and they just left the house. They couldn't find an attorney, but I don't think they could really articulate what happened and the whole chain of events, as far as the house and the fire and, that sort of stuff.
So do you know if that house is still standing and other people are in it?
Well, I don't know if other people are in it. The house is up in Palestine, which is, it's an hour and a half away. So,
right.
I probably won't be going past there to see, unless I happen to be in. Well, you know what? I will be in Palestine in September for a conference. I might just have to drive by.
I'd like to hear, because it would matter the energy that the people are bringing into the space as well too, and how it interacts with you and the things that you're choosing, the things that you bring in, the stuff that you do.
Exactly. They had something they brought with them, but it was very benign. But they also have a son who's on the autism spectrum. And a couple of years ago, every investigation that I actually went to, private home, there was an autistic child in the home. So
That's fascinating.
that was my year of autism. Then I had a year of hoarders. Hoarding, really creates a lot of negative.
Well, yeah, just the mental health aspect of it too, right? And then all of the stuff where it goes sideways. Contessa, who I know is a Supernatural fan, is asking what kind of pictures were affecting the house, or the pictures of sigils.
Well, they would be the pictures of the sigils and the different kind of occult type, symbols, all the stuff that would be associated with the show. Everything other than Sam and Dean's pictures. There was nothing of those. Yeah.
If you don't know what the symbols actually mean or what the intentions are behind them too, like there's a lot to it, again, about educating people, right?
Right. And we did as much education. We were as serious with her as we could be. And her husband, I finally met her husband on that third time, and talking with him. But I just knew, and that's probably the empath in me. I just knew she wasn't going to comply. She could not
Yeah.
give up having things from the show, you know, in every room of her house. You know, it could be something cut out of a magazine even, but she was putting all of those things all
So
over.
do you
And
think,
she had she had also gone to collecting, which I thought was kind of strange. She told me that she thought it was strange, but she could, it's like she couldn't resist, started collecting the Bratz dolls.
but do you think that there's a possibility that whatever was in the house was influencing her to do more of those things?
No, well, that's possible too. They had the one room with the fireplace that things had gone on, things had been burned, was just something that we could feel. I could feel, and I had a like a shaman with me that he felt too. And their son, the one that was on the autism spectrum, and he's, you know, very high functioning, but when he was in the room, and it ended up becoming the master, but when he was in the room, the air conditioner was brand new, but in the winter, well, actually, it didn't matter when it was. All of a sudden, the temperature would start going higher and higher and higher. So in the winter, when the heat was on, it would be up in the high 80s. They would turn it off. They would reset it. So, you know, my suggestion was, because they had them in several windows, is it's a pain, but before you buy another one, because they were watching their money, take it out and put it in another room and plug, you know, or plug it in another room, plug it in another outlet in another room, and see if it's the outlet, or is it
Right.
the unit itself.
Do you think it could have
And
been
you know,
psychokinesis?
that's possible. They never didn't, you know, they didn't do my suggestion, but they said it stopped doing that. He used to see an older lady. There was a little add-on where the room is, that's the utility room, so the washer dryer there, and he would see an older lady in that room often. You know, he would just see, I don't know if it could have been residual
Children,
with her, because there was no interaction with that. He would just see the figure.
right. Children and animals are very sensitive to spirits and elementals and all of those things. And then when you add
Well,
that
they
layer
are.
of autism, there's a lot of autism in our family structure. So those kids are extra sensitive on top of already
They are,
being.
because, yeah, 'cause they're so open. You know, I
Mhm.
had one little girl at one hospital that was closed down, but it was very active, that she was there with her grandmother. The fire department used to do over there, would do a haunted house in that shut down hospital.
Wow.
And when I met her one time, because I kept going, I went there 3 or 4 years. First because of activity, and initially because a friend of mine was trying to get the hospital from the city to open up a really unique place. So I was going up there working with city managers and having meetings and that sort of thing, because they were in New York. But she looked at me. Now, I had already retired, but it had only been a few years. She looks up at me, she was about, I don't know if she was 4 or 5, but somewhere around there. She looks up at me and she goes, "You're a cop." So it's like, well, I was, yes.
Funny, how they pick up on the. I love it. But I mean, I was always sensitive. My kids were sensitive, so that honesty, I would just wish we could carry it forward. Just not
Well,
have
I
it.
know. Yeah. My granddaughter's sensitive too.
My granddaughter's 4. She calls me Queenie. Love it. It just makes me laugh. She's such a
That's
joy.
cute.
It's
Yeah.
uh it's a lot of fun. And I want her to know that these things are normal. Like that
Mhm.
that energy continues, right? After our physical body, that there's
Right.
things, elementals and Bigfoots and aliens, and we can have these conversations, right? Contessa
Right.
is sharing hospitals have a lot of spirit activity. Yes. I
They do.
agree.
Absolutely. Hospitals and nursing homes.
Yes. Tristan is sharing, I see a lot of spiritual activity when I was a child. It stopped once I got to my teens. And I think because we have to fit in. It's survival mode, you know.
Right. And I
Social
think that's
survival mode.
for me, that's probably when it really started to pick up.
Mm.
Was in my teen years.
Mine was pretty on par through my teen years too. A friend's father died during high school, and the whole time during the funeral, her dad was talking the whole time to the funeral, and I didn't tell anybody. I just wanted to get through it, like.
Right.
Because you grow. There was only 600 kids at our high school. It was kind of a small in the middle of nowhere, so you want to fit in.
Yeah, well, there are 200 in mine.
That's even smaller, but I love it. I would not change it. Rural is good. Like, rural is good.
Well, that was back when every Catholic church had a school, and so I went to Catholic school from start to finish, which explains a lot of my weirdness. But
but it was very different. Even hospitals, right? Like there was was there Catholic hospital and the Protestant hospital? There was that.
Well, there still is. Yeah, there still is. Yeah.
Interesting, eh? So I wrote this question down because I was, yeah, it was a thing. It was a conversation with a few people. So I just wanted to get your take on it. I wanted Martha Wisdom on this question.
Okay.
How important is reputation to a paranormal team? And does intention influence your reputation?
Reputations are very important. I have worked very hard. Well, I haven't worked hard to stay out of the drama because there's drama in everything. I try to stay out of the drama. The
For some people, it's their
reputation.
only creative outlet. I think.
I know. And as far as the reputation, I try to be ethical. I try to, do the right thing. The reputation from other people within the community that know me, those that don't know me, it's important to me. It was the same thing when I was a cop. It was the same thing when I was a journalist. It's very important. When I came out to where I live now, I went out to a small community newspaper, and I noticed that nobody had their byline in the newspaper. And I asked, and I was coming from a larger Dallas area paper. And well, actually, I came from one I had been assistant editor of to the one out where I am now. And I asked them, why do you not have your bylines in here? And their reply was, because if something's wrong, I don't want them to know who wrote it, that I wrote it. They won't know who to complain about. So, but I said, well, I want mine on my articles, my photos, because I stand behind what I do.
How do you
important.
not grow? Like, you don't grow.
Well,
we're all going to make mistakes somewhere along the line, but then
sure.
we grow.
And the thing is, I stand behind what I'm doing, and you will never get anybody coming up to you confidentially as a source if they don't know who you are and they don't see your work.
Yeah.
And I have had people do that. They used to do that with me as a cop too. I had my CIs that would feel comfortable, or drug people, or different people, more of the criminal element, that they would feel comfortable enough that they could come and they could tell me something, and that needed to be told, but felt comfortable that I would not say, well, so and so said this.
And I think that
because
happens in the paranormal world too. Like people that are being affected by something they don't understand and can't see are feeling vulnerable. So they need a safe place to share a story to somebody that will listen non-judgmentally.
they do. They do. When I talk about interviewing people, I talk about the fact that you need to leave your beliefs at the door. You need to leave your everything at the door. You need to go in with an open mind, unbiased, and get what you can. Put your phone down. Don't look at text messages and do all this when you're trying to interview somebody,
Right.
because it makes them feel like, you're too busy to talk to me, and I don't, and it makes them, where you want them to open up to you and tell you things, you're just shutting them up more.
Yeah. Not present. I'm just going to respond to this really quickly, and then we're going to start in on paranormal profiling, if that's. I honestly gobbled that book up and then read it again, and I got it on the Kindle. Some books I like the paper feel, but on the Kindle, I can write notes. I got the Scribe, so I can write notes inside. I'm like, this is important.
Right.
Highlight this, send this to, like, there's little notes all the
Well,
way through it. So
get ready for profiling too, because I'm doing an advanced
I think that's
version.
brilliant. I think everybody that's stepping into doing paranormal investigations, if you are going to be a serious team and actually investigating and you don't have those skills, understanding why that's important. I mean, I was a former hairstylist, so my questioning skills are a little different, but I observe everything as well too. Contessa, yes,
Right.
it freaked me out a little bit listening to the spirit talk, but it was comforting as well too, because my friend's dad was lovely. He was lovely. And it just surprised me. And I think it surprises me still, because people will ask me if spirits will come through right after they or pass. And that's a hot topic of conversation as well too. And they do. Sometimes they'll come through before they actually pass over, because they're in that in-between space, right? Especially if they're heavily medicated. So there's that. Yes. So paranormal profiling. What urged you? Where was the, okay, this needs to happen? I find a lot of authors look around going, has anybody done this? Because has anybody done this? This really needs to be done. Well, nobody's done it, so I guess it's going to be me. Did that kind of happen for you with that?
No, I started speaking on the radio. I started as a, speaker at conferences, and the book pretty much goes along. And that's what we talked about, was all the law enforcement and the parallels. But I will say, don't buy Paranormal Profiling that's out there now. That publisher is more or less shut down. I'm trying to get the book pulled for copyright infringement, because our contract was up probably 6 years ago, and they owe me money.
Oh, that's
but
good.
I'm going to keep the same name, but as Paranormal Profiling 2, I'm going to keep that name, so that, and hopefully people, if they go, they'll say, oh, 2, it's a newer version. Let me get that one.
Okay.
And not the other one.
I am sorry if I caused any damage, because I have been telling people about it. So I will recant and blast out a different email to people.
Yeah, stay tuned. It'll be out definitely by this fall. It'll be out.
That's fabulous.
I'm just about, I don't have a whole lot to do on it.
So where would be the first place to start? Things, does the interview thought process actually start before you even go to meet somebody?
It does. So when I get contacted, I used to talk to them for an hour or two sometimes on the phone. I don't do that anymore. I don't really have time for that. And I'm usually driving when we're talking. So even when they did that and I spent the time with them, I still would request a detailed email, because depending on who's going to work with this on me, I need to be able to send them that information too. And because I'm driving, I'm not going to remember all of what they said. So they send me an email with full detail, with their full name, the full address, and their phone number.
Right.
Because, so that I can follow up, keep track. And
do you find anybody leaves out information purposely?
A lot of them just leave it out. Some people can write more than other people. Some people, just, you can't get a lot. Just like when I would have them do give me a written statement,
Right.
with the police department.
Trauma could affect that.
Some people may write 2 or 3 sentences, and people may write a book. It varies, but it gives me a basis to start from. And then I start doing some investigating on the location. Of course, I ask them, what do they know about the history of the location, and the house. Sometimes they've done research. A lot of times they haven't, and they have no idea. But with that address, there's a lot of places I can go with that address to look for information.
Yeah.
And
because
they don't.
Go ahead.
So when they don't send me an email, if they don't send me an email within a week, I'll call them back at least once. And a lot of times with people I spent more time with, they will say that they didn't send an email because after they talked to me, everything stopped, which I thought was kind of interesting, because I would hear that fairly frequently. And then I was at a conference and I was talking to John Zaffis about this. I go, to kind of, tap into his brain for what's the deal. And he looked at me, I think I got a whack on the shoulder, and he says, that's because you're a neutralizer.
Interesting.
I go, oh, I never even thought about anything like that.
Yeah.
And I know that some people give me items that they think are causing problems at their house. I can feel energy when I get it, but by the time it comes and goes to my house, there's nothing. It's been neutralized. Just nothing.
And do you feel because you also are not giving it any energy, like you just don't have time for that? So it's just.
Right.
We're going to ignore.
Right. And,
not feed it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I had one house I went to that the land turned out to be an area, and I'm not sure, they were somewhere within like Palestine, Tyler, somewhere within, that area of East Texas, and I can't remember exactly where, but it turned out that the land had been where their house was, and the house had been 2 houses at least had been moved to that area, but at one point it was land that the gypsies, we're talking 100 years ago or so, when they were passing through East Texas, it was an encampment. And they used to be able to wander around and find things. Pardon?
Right. For traveling families?
Yeah. And they, all of them in the family are actually fairly, well, I don't know about mother, but the rest of them are, the kids are sensitive. Dad is from Venezuela, and he's psychic. But they would all see, well, maybe mother was too, because they used to see 2 little girls with brown hair, in dresses, running and playing. Almost every day they would see them outside running and playing. And they had some of them bought the land and they didn't have access to all the land anymore, the current people. So they had a little barn and they had some goats, and somebody went out to the barn one day and there was a doll in the barn that they all kept blaming each other for putting it in there to play a trick on somebody. But none of it just manifested in the barn. And it was in a bucket on the ground when they found it. And that doll, I have the doll, and it was a collectible type porcelain doll. Only one of the legs is kind of slightly bent. The father felt like there was an attachment to the doll, and it was a boy, and he was the brother of the two girls. That he desperately wanted to be with a family, and so they put the doll in there and he, this is, all sounds crazy, but attached himself to it, hoping to be brought into their house. Only they did not want the doll in their house because they didn't know where it came from.
Right.
And I took the doll home, and because of the bent leg, there is a young boy attached to the doll. That's been verified from a couple of friends of mine who are psychic that didn't know anything about the doll. And they both feel like the little boy was either had a broken leg or he was crippled or deformed in some way. And that's why one of the porcelain legs is actually bent, and you can't straighten it out. That's what I thought. It was interesting. But I also found out that when the uncle was, now it could have been the spirit of this other boy, when the uncle was getting the house ready for them to move into, when he was up in the attic of the house, he found scratches, like finger scratches on the floor. The floor was, pretty much all sheetrock type floor, and he found some coloring books. He found a chain with some shackles or handcuffs attached that was bolted into the floor.
Oh, that's really not good.
No,
that's really
no. And of course, he got rid of everything. And my thing is like, oh, if you had only made a phone call, maybe there was some DNA up there. Maybe there was something that could have, led to a missing child.
Yeah.
So I don't investigate the things that they give me when I bring them home. So I don't know if the little boy with a doll is the little boy that was in chains, or if it's the little boy whose sisters run around and play.
Right.
I just have had enough people tell me that there's a boy to it that didn't know anything about that. It's like, okay, there must be a little boy attached.
So
what
kind of questions would you encourage people to start with? And how important are waivers? And explain what a waiver would be.
Okay, a waiver is, because I have one, and it's protection for the investigators. It's protection for the family. You have them sign the waiver. Initially, for some people don't care who knows about it. Some people don't mind if you share stuff, but not the location or the people. Some want none of it shown. And it's just between the team and the people. And it's very important that you keep that trust, or, you might get sued. I know of teams that, through the years have been sued because I have let everything out there. So just one of the things, you need your waiver, your release of liability, which, they won't, sue you. You won't sue them. Somebody gets hurt, and all that. It's very, very important if you're going to do an investigation to have that and have it signed, and you get a copy and they get a copy.
Yeah.
And,
it's like laying out the terms.
Very basic.
laying out
What
the terms. It's like laying out the terms.
exactly?
And
Exactly. And it puts in there, uh, yeah, you may want to go somewhere that is kind of a public place, but you're not, they don't, they don't have teams there. They don't hold events, but you might want to go to this place. And in those, it's, we're responsible if we, cause problems or cause damage. We know we're responsible for that. Um, we're going to be here X amount of hours. This is pretty much what we're going to use equipment wise. And, that's it, laying out all the terms of everything.
I added
It keeps everybody
on the
safe
waiver
that
that
way.
I added on the waiver that I created that if that client wanted to use any of the evidence that I gave over to them, that they also had to credit me for that. I didn't
That's
want
a
to
good.
see I didn't want to see my photo or video and somebody else taking credit for it. So that was the one thing that I added to the waivers, was anything that I handed over as evidential that I would be given credit for it.
I'm not sure if I have that in there, but that's a good thing to add on to it.
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, I learned that lesson when I was 18 years old, and I should have thought about it because I was shooting the rock concerts. I don't know how I got involved with it. It was with Mid-South Productions. Somebody would give me the film. I'd take the pictures. I'd give them the film. And I never saw anything again, only for me to find out that somebody was going around with my work, saying it was their work and getting work out of it. I was 18. What did I know? My folks were in Texas already. I was still up in Memphis. I know.
That's
I know.
gutting.
I have the only photos I have from everybody that I shot up there were some of the photos I have of Frank Zappa. I have one 8x10 black and white, and then I have some of us in his dressing room that I took. And the sad thing is, he had told me, this was in 72, he had told me that he would like me to send him some photos, but I was, barely making it week to week photos, because he would like to use some on his next album cover. And of course, that never did gel because I never had my work. What I have in color, and the color was because the color film broke in the camera. So I'm the one that I went in and I took care of that film. So I had that developed myself.
Right.
And so they never did get a hold of those.
Disappointing. And
it was.
And
I learned a lot.
well, this is it, right? Like, we do learn a lot. And then trying to stay open-minded so that we aren't closed-hearted and we don't shut down other opportunities. I'm just going to do our station ID really, really quickly, and then we can keep going with this conversation. So if you are just joining us in the chat, or you're just joining in listening to us now, you're listening to us live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 FM out of beautiful New Orleans. And I am your host, Kerrilynn Shahorn. And today's guest is Martha Hazzard Decker. Do you go by Martha Decker?
I go by. I use both. Professionally, with the photography and the books and any articles, anything like that is Martha Hazzard Decker.
Okay. Because I was worried that I was doing it all wrong, because I just kept saying Martha Hazzard Decker. and then I would see it some places where it was just Martha Decker, and I just wanted to make sure that I was being respectful with it. What should people bring when they're interviewing?
A pen and a piece of paper. What I bring when I'm interviewing, I bring a second person, because you need to be safe. Yes, you need to be safe. You're going into their environment most of the time because you're going into their home. So you bring a person, you bring something to write with, and I bring a recorder and a camera, and I have them both going the whole time. And I have the other person taking notes. And I asked them, I do this with my law enforcement stuff. This is how you should do your interview, or when you interview, you ask them to tell you what happened. Just start the beginning and tell me what happened. And then when they stop, well, then what happened? And you don't break into their train of thought until they are complete. Then you go back and ask your questions. You ask to clarify. Say somebody says, "Oh, it's a mean spirit." Oh, well, you go back. What do you mean by mean spirit?
Right.
And they say, "Well, they cuss." Well, what kind of, you break it all down to explain, what do you mean by that? They are happy. Well, what do you mean by happy? What did they do? So anytime when it's a generalized statement like that, you go in and you get the definition from them to know what they exactly mean. Because otherwise, for example, I was getting gas in the patrol car one day, and this lady comes up to me, older lady, and she tells me about something that she saw that was suspicious, but she didn't. A lot of people don't want to call the police and bother them. And they go, well, but that's their job, is to go out for the suspicious people. And so I'm asking for a description from her. And she says, well, they were young. And in my mind, they're young. I'm thinking late teens, maybe early 20s. So I go, well, what do you mean by young? About how old? And she looks at me, she goes, in their 50s.
Thank you.
That wasn't young to me. That was older.
But I'm very cognizant of that same thing when I'm doing sessions for people, because I will say, like, how I'll describe so they feel tall to me. Let me tell you what tall means to me. That's how I always, let me tell you what this means to me. Tall to me, for a male, 5'10" and up, feels over 6 feet. Like, you have to be very clear about, because everybody's perceptions of tall, short, chunky, not chunky, age, it's all different based on, family structure. I was just at this public event last week, and he said this fellow is tall, he's about 5'10", and the guy is looking at me going, that's not tall. And I'm like, my mom's family are women that are 4'10" to 5 feet. So 5'10",
and I would have said that's average. Yeah, I wouldn't have said 5'10" was tall either. It's usually 6 foot or more. Yeah.
Yes. So that's so important. Digging deeper.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if they have a TV on, even if it's muted, turn it off. Have them turn it off, because they're going to end up focusing on that TV when you're trying to interview them, even though there's no sound. So kind of eliminate the distractions if you can.
Right. And we have to ask uncomfortable conversations in order to understand the whole thing.
Absolutely. I tell them, half the time I'm asking them questions, I feel like I'm booking them into jail, because I'm asking the same questions.
And
you want to know.
And you have
to need
do
all that
with
information.
dignity too, right? Like, not to be intrusive and no judgment, but that comes back to the reputation and your intention, like really letting them feel safe and vulnerable.
Yeah, you have, that's it exactly. You have to be that way. Unfortunately, I know some people who gave trust to somebody, and they had some real serious cases, and so they gave some very personal information out, and a few of my, just a few of friends, not very many, but there's a couple people I know, the investigator or the whoever was working with them got mad at them for some reason, and then they start posting all of their personal information. They'll throw out the emails and everything. That's why another reason why that waiver for them to sign is important
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Just for that reason.
Lori
It's another form
Demarest
of
is just
protection for them.
sharing. Sorry, Martha. I just want you to see that I am not the only person that thinks you are fascinating. So Lori Demarest is just commenting, Martha Hazzard Decker, you are fascinating. I agree.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I agree.
I'm just old enough to have a lot of stories. So.
Well, it's the life experience that you have that I find fascinating. Just all of it, and how it does lean into paranormal investigating in such a beautiful, seamless way for you to have that perspective. And then I personally feel anybody that is in any type of emergency services, policing, firefighting, nursing, people don't want to use the term intuitive, but it is intuitive. Gut feeling is intuitive, and that
It
gets
absolutely is.
the more that you do the job.
And I mean, I had a very strong, gut sense, and when I was in law enforcement, but it was much more than that. One of the things that I still do as a process server, is the majority of the time I'm correct, but I seem to have the ability to know if anybody is in a house or not. Is it empty or is someone in there? And I used to use that in law enforcement if I got a call for an open window, open door. And if I were to get there first and have a few seconds before anybody else came, because I'm going to have backup with something open.
Right.
The only way I can explain it, or the best way I could explain it, is like you send out sonar like a bat, and it goes out and around the house. And if somebody just tried to call. If it hits on something, it comes back, and I've never had it wrong saying that there was somebody there. I've had a couple of hits and misses with, thinking nobody's there when they are there, but all of the times when it said they were there, they were there.
Yeah.
And
I would love to see the language, like the comfortableness of different language being accepted, right? Just having different, saying intuitive and being okay with using the word intuitive instead of gut feelings. Like, I would like people be more comfortable that way, because then I think they would take ownership of those intuitive senses and be able to build on them even more, right? Nicole is just sharing. Can I read this for you? Sorry. As a teacher of young children and being intuitive, this information is very relevant to me too. Very awesome. I'm glad that, what we're able to share today is helpful.
When interviewing children, that's one of the things sometimes I speak about, how to interview children, because
let's talk
a
about
lot of people don't necessarily know how to do that. They don't really know how to do it correctly. And I listened to hundreds and hundreds of interviews with children at the advocacy centers working the crimes against children.
Right.
And I do it pretty much the same way they do. You start with, do they know the difference between truth and a lie? And when they get older, when they're older, teenagers, you don't have to do this, but with the younger kids, you have to work with that. And sometimes they don't really know the difference. So and this is where I like the interaction with the audience, because I'll act like they're the children, and I look at someone and I say, if I say you're sitting on a horse right now, is that true or is that a lie? And the kids will giggle and go, well, that's a lie. And if I say, if you're sitting on a chair, is that truth or a lie? Well, that's true. So I will use sometimes a little outlandish type stuff like that, because it gets them more relaxed. I also asked them, once we've determined, determine that and we move on, another thing I ask the children is, do you know why I'm here? Because I've had kids repeat what their parents have said. They want something to, they want something to be there so bad. And not only that, but a lot of times kids hear things and parents think, oh, they're kids, they're asleep. They don't know, but that's not true. But I ask them because sometimes the parents will tell them what to say. They may want to be on a TV show. They may want their business to be listed as haunted, or something along those lines. And then the other thing I ask them is to tell me who lives in their house. Then, we make notes of that. And they start listing off people, because you never know, they might list some spirit that they're interacting with.
Right.
That was a question. Right. And that's a question that I asked when I interviewed kids when I was working, the with kids and crimes, is who is there. And of course, then I would go, what do you like best, or what do you like least about your mother, your father? And, on down the line with all these people. And, who are they? And, who are these people? Because you never know. You never know that, I haven't had one give me a name of somebody living in the house that doesn't actually live in the house, but you never know. And
it's everything from
do
mental
it all in
health.
a way they feel comfortable.
Like, we have to think about mental health, and medication, addictions.
We do, well, we do, but with the children too, the other thing is you need to ask an open-ended question, not a closed-ended question. It needs to be not a yes/no question, an open-ended one, where they will tell you something. And that's the same thing with them too, is you let them tell you their story, and then after you're done, you can go back. If he said they had a hat on, well, what kind of hat was it? Then you go get into the more specific things as well.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth.
And again, I feel it is, those steps are important if you are wanting to build your reputation and to build that group. Like, if you're wanting to be an investigative group, as a group, you are setting out the guidelines of what your group represents and how you are going to work, and you lay a good foundation starting off this way and following through with it, right?
Yeah. And it's good to know, because when you're asking all those real personal questions, you're asking about mental health, medical health, what kind of drugs, prescription, illegal, or what, call them something other than illegal. But the mental, because sometimes it's when you ask that, an example that I use is I was with a caseworker going to a house with a lady because she was not supposed to be alone with her children. She's schizophrenic. But as we go into the apartment, I see the kitchen. There's like nothing out in the kitchen, but there's like a big canning pot full of boiling water on the stove. So I go and I sit down, and the caseworker goes through all their questions, the social history, all of that. And a lot of times they'll skip through. They'll go, mental health, I have, bipolar, I'm schizophrenic, or whatever. And they move on to the next question. Well, I stopped her and I asked the lady, do you hear voices? Because I know they usually do. I have a cousin who's schizophrenic as well. And she said, yes. So my next question was, do you hear them now? And she says, yes. And I go, well, what are they telling you? And she said, they told me to boil a pot of water and pour it over myself. And that would have never been found out if you hadn't just delved in just a teeny bit further. So needless to say, that pot was poured out before we left.
Right. And that's the
Yeah,
observational skills.
exactly. Yeah,
Like really
yeah.
paying attention to everything that's in the environment, and not just the environment, but how that person is looking or moving or fidgeting or any of
Or
those things.
yeah, you look for the changes in demeanor. Even more so with children. Um, there's one guy in Texas that has called so many teams, and so many of us know each other, and we talk.
Right.
And he eventually got around to me, and what he was looking, now he is in and out of the hospital. He has severe mental issues. He wants a female investigator to come to his house alone for the demons in the house. He lives with his parents. He doesn't want his parents there. He doesn't want them to know. So again, that's where the safety in numbers comes in. You always take somebody.
That's a whole lot of
And
red
we
flags right off the hop. That's a lot of
oh,
red flags right
I
there.
mean, they were popping up, and I just simply told them, I said, we do not go somewhere investigate without the permission of the owners. And that's how I put it to him. And he hadn't called in a few years, but he called off and on, every year or so. And I saved his number with something on there so I would know not to answer that phone.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, intuitively, you can pick up when there's something else that's going on as well, too, right? But
Yeah,
would you suggest that groups also have those crisis phone numbers, support line numbers, accessible and to hand out to
sure.
clients as well, too?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And I also tell them if they're dealing with children, there may come a day that they need to call CPS in whatever state they're in and make a report. And, a couple of times I thought I was going to have to do that, or we were going to have to do that until I got there. And it wasn't needed. It was kind of borderline. I had one, the daughter was 12. And when I talked to the mother on the phone, she sounded like the most hysterical, crazy person you ever talked to. And she'd tell me about something, and then I would reply, but at least it hasn't done this. And all of a sudden, here's pictures of a bruise, or it hasn't done this. And all of a sudden, there's a picture. So whatever I said, because we couldn't get to her till a few days later, when kids are involved, we usually get there faster. But everything that I said, trying to calm her and make her more comfortable, she would all of a sudden have happen. And I wasn't buying it at all. They even took 2 Bibles at one point and ripped pages out of them and tried to say they woke up and they were flung across the room. But that's where my law enforcement background came in, because I'm looking at these, inspecting, and you can see the indentations from their fingers from trying to rip out pages. And
yeah, that I remember reading that. I remember reading
yeah, that one is in that book. Yes. Yeah. And she called me about a year later to come back to another town she'd moved. She just wanted out of her lease. There was nothing going on in the house.
Funny, the things that people, and I don't have a whole lot of patience for that. Let me just get to some of this. So, hi, Roland. Thank you for being here. We're talking about paranormal profiling with Martha Decker. She has a background in law enforcement, photography, firefighting. There's all kinds of things. He was just asking if you were an empath. So yes, we would agree that you are an empath.
Yes, I am. I am.
So we're not we just haven't got to that part of any of the conversations. We're just kind of focusing on the importance of asking all the questions before we even begin doing some kind of investigation and what would happen that way. Oh. Hi, Adriana. Hi, Jen. Thanks for being here. Oh, it's not that we're not talking about those things, Roland. So, you know, we just haven't got to that part. That's not the focus of the conversation today.
But I am. I'm more than an empath, though. I can say that.
For sure. And I loved, I had saw a social media post where you were taking people to the Haunted Hill House in Mineral Wells, Texas, and doing the intuitive development or beginner psychic class in that home. And I audibly went woohoo, because I have done that. I've taught all day, and then I take them to a location, and it changes a class when you can immerse them in a space. Can you talk about what that? Well, first of all, let's talk about Haunted Hill House in Mineral Wells.
Yes.
Yeah, you know what, Roland, we're not here to read people or give messages today. So if this is not the kind of conversation for you, then, you know, you can keep scrolling by. Let's talk about Mineral Wells, Haunted Hill House.
Okay. It's a fun place.
Well, I follow them on social media, and the videos, there's just no denying that there's stuff that's going on in that space.
It's very active. One of the last psychic classes that we did there, well, they'll come in on Friday night, and we don't tell them anything about the house. And I always ask if somebody's in the class who knows about the house, don't feed them any information so we can talk about it in the class.
Right.
But the last time the class, it's an all-day class, like 9 to 5. We were interrupted so many times by audible voices and audible comments, and on something passing by the kitchen where we hold the class in, and that's like their command center with all it'll have the TVs on there because all the rooms they have video, you know, in all the rooms. They have cameras in all the rooms. They only have a few cameras that have mics on them, and those are their security cameras. The rest of them don't even have that. And it was funny because there were a couple times. There's one time, because there's a curtain that separates the kitchen from the hall, that a whole face pushed through on the curtain, and you could see a whole face. It's like they just, you know, stuck their face right into the curtain.
That gives a whole new meaning to behind the veil or beyond the veil. Like that's like
There
just
you go.
yes. Yes. Totally does.
So that was pretty good.
Yeah. It really helps though. I would feel it would help with that discernment, like inside eye, inside ear, and really pushing those clairs forward, right? Like for you to engage.
It does. So I have a friend who's gone to the house with me a couple times, and she's totally deaf in one ear. But when she's there and she hears something coming through in her deaf ear, she's like, now she's sensitive too. She's like, oh, oh no.
Joanne?
She only comes on a special occasion. So, but yeah, she has heard hisses or growls or different things, you know, in coming in from audible, that because I can hear it too. But she's hearing it through her deaf ear as well.
So do you find that the spirits that are in that house, do they act differently or engage differently when it's a class or if it's an investigation? Because they are like, I've always encouraged people to treat them like living people. And it's their space, so you need to be respectful because you're intruding in their space.
You know, absolutely, because, everything was living in some form or another at one time, and things and people come and go from the house. They're not always in the house. But there's always activity. And so much of what people get who rent the place for the night depends on their intentions.
Yes.
And their energy.
And people don't get it. People want to lie about their intention, but your thoughts, words, and actions need to line up. And spirits know. If that's not all jiving, spirits will know. The people might get fooled, but the spirits are going to know, and they'll call you out.
Oh, they call people out on some of their blank security cameras. Those are the ones that will pick up the audio, and they're the only ones that pick up audio. And it's hilarious, some of the stuff. So I was there. I have stayed at the house overnight more times than anybody has. So many of the paranormal teams, they run out in the middle of the night. So when I was working on the book, I was there for, I stayed there over several nights. But I was staying there not to investigate. I was staying there to see what it would be like if you were just living there.
Right.
So first day, it was very calm. It was, first night, just mostly it was residual stuff. And there was stuff going on off and on during the day, the second day. But that night I shut my computer. Well, I need to start from the beginning with this. So Toby is the entity that's not used to be just upstairs in one room, but Toby is in all the house now at different times. So one of the times I was staying there by myself, when I was staying there, I don't remember if I was by myself when it happened, but I was, I was by myself in the room. But I woke up to Toby's hiss. And Toby's hiss is the same. It's kind of a metallic, almost sounds like the commercial spray things of deodorizer and stuff. It sounds a lot like that, but that's Toby. Right. So I woke up to that. I ignored it. I didn't open my eyes. I just went back to sleep. Didn't acknowledge. No big deal. So several months later, another time I was staying there, I went to bed. I usually will stay in the Axe room. That's just the room I like to stay in because I can get on one side. I can hear activity from upstairs, activity from inside the rest of the house in that room. Right. And I do hear. But as soon as I got in bed, I didn't even really have my eyes closed. I just kind of closed and laid down sort of. As soon as I did, Toby was there. And if I'd opened my eyes, if you could have seen it would have been like a nose to nose. It was that close with a hiss that should have had spittle and kind of wind. I just ignored it. I just rolled over like I didn't hear anything. And that was the end of that. So it was like a kid almost, for a little bit. Now it's a little bit, more advanced. And then when I was staying there working on the book, I shut everything down. I got ready to go. I was half asleep, get ready to get up. And I hear from upstairs the loudest. If you could combine a hiss, a growl, a yell, a roar, and everything else together into one, that's what came from upstairs, and it vibrated the walls. It was so loud.
Right.
Well,
I say this is
that kind of,
Mom.
So,
Mom,
that's That startled
Wow.
me a little bit, right? It startled me. I run up there to the curtain. I like sling that curtain. I look up there and I look up there upstairs and I go, well, I heard you, Toby. Well, what? What do you want? But I'm yelling that up there. So what? What's your point?
Yeah.
And I had just been talking to Kathy a few minutes earlier. So, the owner of the house, one of the owners of the house. So the adrenaline's pumping. I'm going to go sit outside for a few minutes and let it calm down. So I'm calling her as I'm unlocking and unhooking everything that was on the front door then. As I get her on the phone. So I had just walked past that security camera. While I'm talking to her, Sonny, her husband, tells her what he just got from the camera, because when I went by, it triggered it, right?
Right.
And what they picked up was they heard it. What came through on it that they picked up on the audio was, look, Toby made her turn red. He'll get her later. Is what they had on there. So that kind of unnerved them a little bit. And Ryan, who's the guy that comes in when someone wants an investigator, he and his mother live right around the corner. They called them and they came over and stayed with me a little bit because of the he'll get her later bit.
Right.
And poor Ryan was so sad because I wouldn't let him investigate. I didn't want to change the environment in the house.
Right.
I wanted to keep it like it had been. Yeah. And then the next morning, I see Joshua. Pretty much all the rooms are the same names that the previous owner had given them, the person they bought the house from. And I look on the camera and I noticed there was a door. Joshua's room is enclosed, but there's a door that you could crawl through and go around to the back by the fireplace and all the rest of the open attic over there by him, by that room. The door was open. That door can stay closed for months and it'll just open on its own. So I go up there, and as I go up there, when you hit the top of the stairs, there's another security camera. That's how we get some of the hilarious or I'll get some of the audio.
Right. There's that one video
when people come up,
she got
because
pushed.
it triggers it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Sorry.
So as I go up there and turn the corner to go to Joshua's room, I just look into Toby's room. And I go, Toby, did you do that last night? And then I went on into the room and shut the door, jumped around, banged around. It was shut, wasn't coming open. Went back downstairs and it was open. So, once I went back and rewound to the time that it did that. And I watched it a few times, but I also noticed now I'm the only one in the house. As I start watching the background. And as I walk into the room, several other shadows come into the room with me. And then when I turn to leave, I leave. And once I've turned the corner, they turn and follow me.
Interesting.
So that was pretty interesting. But Sonny got the answer to my question. Like as soon as I asked that, the answer came back, yep. When I'd asked, was that you, Toby? He said, yep.
Yeah.
It's like,
so
okay.
funny. They really, to me, they are like those little kids, mom, and they're nattering at you, mom, 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 and you're not giving them any energy. Then it's like, mom, it's like that freak out thing is going to happen with them, right? Joanne, I did see
That's
this.
yeah.
When you were asking,
I was gonna say, yeah, that's how that was.
The history of the house, you can find it's Haunted Hill House. They're the Mineral Wells, Texas. They do have a Facebook page and you can follow along. And it's daily. They post videos daily. And just even with I know that I may get myself in trouble for using the word that I'm about to use because it's kind of salty, but the ass hats that show up just to go to the porch when they're not even allowed to be there. And those people have experiences and they're not even in the house.
They'll get sick.
Yeah.
They'll get sick. They will get sick and throw up sometimes right before they even leave the property.
Yeah, and it's all on their security cameras, all of that stuff. Like
Yep.
the voices that comes through. I find it interesting too, the camera that they have by the piano. Like, so the piano sounds that happen all the time are pretty interesting to me. That one video with the lady that fell
Piano,
and
what?
broke the banister.
Yep. Well, one of the first few times I stayed in the house by myself, the piano was probably about 4 a.m. Someone like a little kid banging it, on the piano woke me up, and
Yeah,
I
great.
was listening to the bang, bang, bangs, and
So
talking to somebody that used to be in somebody's bedroom,
the
and
piano?
the piano was in the bedroom.
Okay.
Some people who lived there previously, and talking to this person, interviewing her. Um, she said she is the one that moved it because it kept waking her up.
Interesting. There's just so much.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to have you come back again because I just need to be cognizant of our time and we need to start winding down. But there's
Sure.
so much more to talk about. So when the book 2 comes out, let's do it again. I would love to.
Sure. Anytime. Anytime.
So, are you speaking anytime soon? Is there a class coming up anytime soon? Where can
Um,
people get the
I,
book about Haunted Hill House that you wrote?
on Amazon. I hope to have another psychic class coming up, and it will be over in Sulphur Springs, Texas, at a house that is haunted. Um, and the owner I got to know back when he was a captain in CID for sheriff's department, because I was contacted. That's on an unsolved case, and
Right.
so it's going to be over at his house. And I'll be not this weekend, but the next weekend. I will be up in McAllister, Oklahoma, at a Paracon up there. And then the weekend after that, I'll be speaking in Oklahoma. I'll have a table, sharing a table with a friend of mine, Dr. Rita Louise, at the MUFON Symposium over in the Dallas area. And then I think it won't be until September when I start all the fall conferences, and they'll just be on my Facebook. If they do look up Martha Hazzard Decker, they'll all be on there because I've got, I don't know, half a dozen or so, towards fall and everything coming up.
Yeah, it's the busy time of year, September, October.
Yep.
It gets to be the busy time of year. Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on here.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah.
If you guys want to hang around on the United Public Radio Network, Jeffrey Pritchett is up next with the Church of Mavis. Next week, my guest is Sean Michael Couchet. He's a guest medium on Portals to Hell, Haunted Case Files. He was also on Haunted Case Files, if you guys watched any of those segments. So we're going to be talking about all things paranormal and mediumship next week as well too. Thank you to Joe Montaldo and Michelle DeRoche for having this space. So thank you to United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 FM out of beautiful New Orleans. Thanks so much, everybody in the chat, for being here. If you guys weren't here, it just wouldn't be the same. You guys help keep the conversation going. You always ask such great questions and involved. I'm just so grateful to all of you guys for being here. So have a safe, if you guys are celebrating Canada Day, if you're going to Pride in Toronto, you guys have a safe long weekend, and I will see you back here next Friday. Have a good night, everybody.